guys, the new tank came in from LMC, and as advertised in their catalog, there is a modification that's required to make this fit on the Blazer. I believe this tank is stamped for the C10, and we just have to kind of adapt it over to the Blazer by changing the filler neck. Now, I stumbled along somebody on the internet that was talking about cutting this filler neck and then re-welding it to the new tank filler neck, but I'm going to try a little bit of a different approach. This thing looks to me like it's sealed and bolted to the tank, and I'm just going to try to take those bolts loose and break the sealant, clean it all up and reseal it, and reattach it to the new tank. I'm going to start with the old one first in case things go wrong. I won't be messing up this new, I think it was $150 tank here. I also ordered the pickup tube and the transmitter for the indication, the fuel, what do they call that? The fuel gauge. This one just old, so another $50 to replace that. Probably a good idea if you got your tank out to go ahead and replace that as well. The straps that hold these tanks in, a little bit of a different story here. I'm not sure what to make of it. This is the old strap with this hook on the end, and in this flange here, which in my installation in the Blazer had a U-bolt that went through the frame, and these straps slid up on the threaded part of the U-bolt, and then a nut would pull it up and cinch it up nice and tight. This is what LMC sent me, and they're obviously a different shape, and instead of a U-bolt, they've got some hooks. Again, I would bet that these are built for the C10, and I'm gonna have to do either some modification. It's not too big of a deal. I could knock these rivets out of this strap right here and reuse these hooks. That might be the direction I go, but I'll keep you in the loop on that as well. But I'm going to get cracking here on removing the filler neck and swapping that over, and hopefully that goes all right. Well, here's another difference I just noticed. These little tabs here that center it in the frame are well, they're not on the new tank, just empty holes, and it looks like that's a pretty beefy bracket. So I don't know if that thing's spot welded on there or just rusted on there, but somehow I'm gonna have to get that removed and cleaned up and then transfer it over to the new tank. What the heck? Yeah, this thing may be soldered together. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing that they soldered this thing together. Well, this filler neck is definitely soldered to the tank, and I'm about to put some heat on it with my propane torch to try to desolder it. I may not be able to create enough heat. I may have to go to the oxygen and acetylene to get enough heat to desolder it. I don't need to tell you guys putting heat to a tank, especially with an open flame, is a dicey operation. But this tank has been empty for months and months and months, maybe even years, since it's had fuel in it. And not only has the filler been open and the vents been open, so has the sending unit hole been open. And when I stick my nose in there and give it the old sniffer test, I don't get the least bit of fumes or fuel smell. So I'm fairly confident that not going to have any problems with this thing with an open flame. Certainly shouldn't have any problems with the new tank. I'll give it the sniff test as well, but it should, hopefully has never had any fuel in it. So let's give this a whirl. Cross your fingers. All right, that worked out well. Thing's a little bit crusty. Gonna need to run through the bead blaster for sure. And I'll have to clean up this. Let me see if I can get some of the solder off of me before I run it through the bead blaster. That cleaned up pretty well. So getting ready to pull the old nubby off here, and LMC didn't spare any solder on assembling this. It looks like it's got a lot of solder in it. I will give them credit. Looking back at the old tank and the fittings that go into it, the vents and all, the solder job looks better on these, on the new tank, than it does on the old tank. So I'm pretty happy with the quality here. Let me see if I can get these nuts off and get that little nubby filler neck desoldered. Uh-oh. Red flag, red flag. Hopefully that's not metric. Cursed. Oh, it's got a lot of solder on it. Well, maybe I'll heat it up first. Oh, that is not. I wonder if they used a higher temp solder. Certainly taking more heat. Son of a biscuit. Oh boy. Yeah, I'd say they brazed it on there. What are we gonna do now, Luther? All right, well, I think it's pretty pretty easy to see that they brazed it on there. So, well, I'm gonna have to step up our game. this. All right, what do we have here? Well, that wasn't pretty, but looks like we got it done. You know what? I may try to heat it up a little bit more and see if I can push those, what's left of those bolts out of there. I'm sure they're brazed in as well, so we can figure out how to replace those. Oops, sorry about that. Oh, what the heck? Oh my goodness. Wow. What the heck? Like the tank just cracked. Embrittlement. Oh my goodness. Have you ever started down a path or find yourself going down a path you wish you hadn't gone down? Well, this is a mess. I don't know exactly what happened here. This metal is pretty thin, and apparently it's probably pretty stressed from being in the, being formed in a stamp form. But man, it crumbled away quicker than I thought it would, and just cracked to pieces. You can see here that there's a crack that goes clear out past the flange here. So gonna have to get pretty creative to fix this. I think maybe some kind of doubler behind it and then braze it all together. But I got some work to do here. Shoot. All right. All right, it's pretty cleaned up, and the back sides of it feel nice and smooth. And here's my approach for putting this thing back together. I got a couple of well, they're 10mm heads. So what is that? I don't know. It's a metric bolt in a standard washer. It's a good. This is actually an AN washer, so it's a good quality washer. I'm gonna try to figure out a way to hold these back here, install the spout, and loosely put the nut on, and do that for both sides. And then I can kind of should be able to wiggle it around and position it, and then braze the whole thing together is what I intend to do. So you know that before we get into that, oops, I'll just place that down there. It's kind of interesting. They formed a lip on this upper part of the fuel tank, and this spout has a place for that lip to go. I guess maybe that's to make it so it doesn't leak. That was their intention, but it doesn't fit perfect. And I think it might be because of that solder right there. So I'm going to work that out of there and try to make it fit a little better. Well, that was easy. Yeah, I had to hang it from the ceiling. Use gravity for good, not evil. And once I got it into position, there hanging from the ceiling, it only took about 4 or 5 tries, and frustration level about 9. Well, the idea here is I'm going to loosen this back up a little bit more. Is I got a little bit of wiggle room here. I can adjust this thing, and whoops, get it where it looks like it was sitting in the old one. I'll go back and review the pictures. Doesn't look very good right in there, does it? Let me get a wrench. No, it sure would have been nice if LMC could order some of these tanks from Taiwan with without these necks brazed on there, so the blazer guys could. It'd make it pretty easy then. You could just desolder your old one and then resolder it to this new tank. If they just take it up to the point where they braze the studs in and then leave it from there, the rest of it would be fairly easy without too much trouble. All right, well, I'm happy with that. Hopefully we can get a good braze in there all the way around, and they did the hardware as well, and I'm gonna have to come up to this crack right here and braze that as well. Looks like I need to clean it a little bit better as well. It looks like there's still some paint in it. And again, I think I'm gonna flop the tank around and have gravity help me. All right, I got this flame pretty low. I want to start off with real low heat. I don't know what this metal is, and a little suspicious about it cracking. So I'm going to start off real low and just try to work a bead around it and see how that goes. Hey, this is turning out to be an absolute disaster. Um, I, the first time I welded it, I put a nice little bead all the way around it and used some pretty low temperature, but I noticed a little bit of a crack right here. So I heated it back up and put a little bit more brazing material right there. It was actually a crack in the sheet metal in the tank, and it cracked again. So I tried again, and then I decided I was going to try to heat the whole area up. So I put a little brazing rod down and then switched over to my cutting torch so I could get a wider area, and then heated the whole thing up and let it cool down slowly. And this is what the results were. An absolute mess. And it's not just the brazing rod that's cracking, it's actually the tank itself that's cracking. You can see down in here, I mean, there's not even any brazing rod right there, and it's cracking. So I don't know what I'm going to do here. This whole thing might be a wash. All right, guys, I'm done for the day. I'm just disgusted with this. I don't know where to go from here. I can't make any headway on it. I've tried and tried and tried different techniques to keep this from cracking, and I don't know what's going on. I know this metal's thin. It's probably 25 thousandths or so, and I've treated it as such. I've brazed it with low heat. I've tried all kinds of different techniques, heating the whole thing and letting it cool down evenly. I've tried to just do a little bit, let it cool, do a little bit more, let it cool, and it just will not braze up and not crack. The last little swing I took at it was with some silver solder. It's hard to tell the difference here, but there is a layer of silver solder on top of this, and it takes far less heat to get to the melting point than the brazing rod does, and it just opened right up. So I'm at a loss here. I don't really know. The truth is, I'm probably looking at buying another $150 tank. It's $170 by the time you get it, because you got to pay extra shipping on it. And then what do I have? I have a tank with a little nubby stuck to it that I guess I can braze that pipe to this pipe. I'm nervous about that. I don't know, but I'm done for the day, and maybe something will come to me tonight. But this is frustrating. All right, licking my wounds, taking my lumps, and moving on. not going to be able to fix it without really cobbling it up, laying sheet metal over it, or pro sealing it or some kind of sealant on it. Just not happy with that. Poked around the internet a little bit, looked for another tank that was made from another supplier, another source, and I don't think they're out there. I think these all come out of the same dies, go through the same process, so probably expect the same results from another supplier. If they're all coming from the same source, then you're not gonna see anything different. So I called LMC back with the intention of helping solve this problem, not shaming them into sending me another tank, but I wanted to help everybody going through this process solve this problem. And hey, they were great. Sent some pictures to the service department. I hope they're going to use it for R&D and not proof that I'm not scamming them. That certainly wasn't my intention, or it's not my game. I'd like to see somebody sell these tanks without this flange brazed on there. Just the plate there, the plate with the two studs sticking out. People that have these K5s could desolder their old filler necks from their old tanks, because mine was originally soldered on. I'm assuming they're all coming from the factories in the 60s and 70s soldered on. Desolder it. If that little gooseneck, well, this one wasn't brazed on there, if it was just the open flange, then you could take your old gooseneck, your old filler neck, bolt it to this one with some flux behind it, solder your old neck to the new tank, very low heat, easy to do, problem solved. So if somebody can source these tanks from the supplier, from the manufacturer, without these 2-inch necks on here, then hey, that's the way they need to sell them to the K5 guys. Well, here's the good news in all this. LMC, like I said, was great. They sent me this tank and didn't argue about it. Wasn't my intention when I called them, but they didn't hesitate either. They know that there's modification required to make these fit the K5, and they didn't tell me that I did it the wrong way. They didn't argue about it. They sent me a new tank. So thumbs up to LMC for great customer service. I couldn't be happier about that. So my next step is, I think I'm going to mount this new tank in the truck and then cut this filler neck off with the whiz wheel, back here someplace close to the flange, and then try to manipulate either, I would like to, if I need to, expand this this little short nipple out a little bit, so this one telescopes in there, slides in 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch, something like that, gives a nice wide mating surface, and then I'll flux it up, and I think I'm going to silver solder it on there, and see how that goes, and definitely try to keep the heat away from the flanged in area here where I had all the issues. So you'll see how that goes. Hopefully it'll go well, but that's the direction I'm headed now. Thanks, LMC. All right, I flappered off the flange that was left on there, and brought it down to the original pipe diameter, and then rummaged through the scrap bin until I found a piece of piping that was the right ID on it, and ran it through the bead blaster, cleaned it up a little bit, and I think that's going to fit in there nicely. Take a little bit of tapping to get it in there, but I think it's going to be good, and it fits over the outside diameter of this nipple as well. So my plan is I'll wind up cutting this nipple off as short as I can, sliding this over the top of it, and I'm still oscillating back and forth whether I'd really love to be able to braze it in there, maybe come in from the inside where the lip is and just lay a little bit of a bead, maybe even heat it from the outside. But I'm nervous about that. I don't want to get this flange too hot again and cause some more cracking. But before I can do any of that, I think I'm going to need to put the tank in the frame and figure out how to index this so it's in the right orientation. Obviously, don't want to put it, brazen in the wrong spot or silver solder it, however I get the nerve to do it. But so that's the next step. I think I'm going to try to throw it in the frame and try to get this thing indexed so we put it on in the right position. All right, let's talk about straps a little bit. We need good straps to install the tank, and the LMC is good about sending new straps with the new tanks, but their straps are a little bit different than what we had. You can see ours were in pretty bad shape, so we wanted to use the new straps, but I didn't quite understand or like the way their hardware was. I wanted it more like the original straps. So what we've done is drilled off the hooks that are on the end. Here's the original hooks, and we just drilled them loose, drilled the steel rivets out of them, and taken this plate off the old strap as well, and flattened out the new strap. It comes in a package like this with a big kink in the middle of it. We flattened those out, laid the old strap on the new one, and drilled the holes in the same place. And then we just made some steel rivets pretty quick on the lathe, and just some mild steel. And we'll go ahead and drive those rivets in. You could probably use you could certainly use a bolt and a nut, wouldn't be any problem at all, or a screw and a nut as well. But we're going to bump these in, and we've already done this side already. And then I think we'll probably shoot some paint on these, give them a little bit more protection, and then be able to install the tank. All right, the next problem we had to solve was these little alignment tabs aren't on the new tanks. I looked at removing these off the old tank and then fastening back onto the new tank, but this plate right here is already installed on the new tank. Let me take you over there and show you it. All right, so the new tanks already come with this plate spot welded to the tank. It's kind of a reinforcement plate, but it doesn't have the little tabs in it to help align it with the frame. So what we did is we just cut some round 1/2 inch stock and brazed it into the frame. So now there's a little piece of 1/2 inch stock sticking out of the frame to help us align the tank. All right, so here's the pins sticking out of the frame now. Messed up the paint, but we'll get that touched up. So here's the aft one, and then the forward one, and I think that's gonna hold it in there nicely. All right, we've had the tank back in the truck and indexed everything where it needs to go. Wound up cutting this supplied nipple down to about 1/2 inch here, and we've got it cleaned up, and the inside and the outside of our little spacer tube, or not, it's really a spacer tube, it's just a connecting tube here, and the same on the gooseneck. Got it cleaned up and indexed. So we're getting ready. We're gonna try the silver solder this thing, and still gonna try to keep as much heat off of the tank in this area as possible. So I'm going to employ a high-tech welding deflector here. All right, so it's just a wet sock. I hear you judging. It's been sock, so it's got to work. All right, so we'll put it in place. We got some flux here we're going to put on it. Ben's been over here diligently mixing it up. So we're a liberal amount of flux in it. Oops. And might as well coat this as well. I did all this cutting and grinding. We put a vacuum cleaner in where the sending unit goes to try to keep as much grime and grit out of this tank as possible. Hopefully it did a good job. We'll take a peek in there before we put it in the truck. Maybe we need to blow it out. Well, now I can't see my witness mark on the. Well, maybe I can put that on later. Just tap that on there best we can. Okay, now the witness marks are nice and lined up, and what I'm going to try to do is come in here with the heat and wick the silver solder in from the inside, and hopefully it'll just kind of seep back in there and do a nice job bonding that. So all right, heat deflector, high-tech, NASA approved, NASA designed heat deflector. Torch, contact, clear. There we go. All right, I don't like that very well. The flame is so broad that it's heating a lot of areas that I don't really like to heat. So I may get the acetylene torch out here. We can concentrate it a little tighter. Be more heat, but we can concentrate it better. Let's see how we're looking. All right, I don't see any cracking going on here. This is still in good shape. It's pretty warm. We'll set back up with the torch and give that a whirl. All right, take two. Got the acetylene torch up here and real soft or a low heat flame, and I'm gonna just try to get in there and get out as quick as we can. There it goes. All right, good. All right. You cool it down, rotate it a little bit. Took it a while to start wicking it in there, but it eventually did. Well, that flowed in there pretty good. It took more heat than I really wanted to put on it, but once the two mating surfaces heated up, it did a pretty good job of flowing in there and cleaned up real nice. And what I like about it is there's no damage out here. There's no cracking. Discolored the paint a little bit, but I think we're in pretty good shape here. This is all crack free. So now we're going to put the other part of it on and solder it as well. All right, there it is, soldered all the way around, inside and out. And the solder we used was Harris. Here it is, Safety Silv 56. I thought it was a pretty high silver content. I'm not sure, it's been a while since I ordered it, but that 56 may be the percentage of silver. I don't know. I didn't order it for this project. I ordered it for actually trying to solder bandsaw blades together, and didn't have a whole lot of luck with that. But here's the flux. It's a Harris product as well. Stay Silv, and it seemed to work real well. The solder flowed in there nicely. It's very stiff. I think it's going to be plenty strong enough, and it's certainly better than the results that we had before. So yeah, what a wreck that is, huh? All right, so now we're going to put the tank, well, probably we're going to talk about painting this tank, I think, to put a little better protection on it and to get that gooseneck all painted. But tank in, and I'll try to show you a few shots of the straps. Maybe we'll put that in now, since we're not going to have time to paint it today, but we'll put it back in with the straps on it, and a couple of still shots of that, so you can see how those straps turned out. All right, there's the filler neck and kind of working its way around the body mount here. And let me show you what's going on underneath. All right, there's the pins we brazed in. That's a pretty good shot of those. And don't judge Ben on his viper marks there on the rivets. All right, this side. All right, you see the pins, and the U-bolt. Some of these trucks are different. I think they just have a J-hook up in the frame, but ours had a U-bolt, and since we boxed the frame in, we kind of caged that U-bolt in. But that's it. So after we painted the tank, we just used some black RTV. It's what I had on hand, and applied it to this mating flange here, and then combed it. It was just a piece of plastic that I notched out to give it some grooves. And I did the same on the bottom of the straps as well. After we painted those with a couple of coats of the POR, the base coat and the top coat, and then the RTV, and combed it out. I've used this technique quite a bit in the aviation world, where the small airplanes, they vibrate like a Harley, and a lot of the baffling and all kind of chafes together. So if you do this technique, it kind of keeps the parts away from each other, and keeps them from well, in that case they're wearing each other out. In this case, hopefully it'll keep it from squeaking. All right, guys, let's put this one to bed. I'm done with it. It's in. I'm ready to move on, and this is taking longer than I expected it to, like everything else. I am thinking about pouring a little bit of silicone in the top of that, transducer fuel pickup, just to keep the crud out of it. You know how they collect moisture and dirt and cause rust. So I'm thinking that if I just pour some silicone in there, let it harden up, it should keep that moisture out. I've taken the value of the potentiometer in the down position, so I know what that value is. If I pour something in there to keep that moisture out, I'll be able to tell if it changed that value or not, whether I need to scrape it back out of there or not. Everything else looks good. The gooseneck, I'm happy with it. The strapping went fairly well. I did have a little bit of an issue when I started to tension up. I think it was the back one. Well, it popped the spot welds loose here, so I had to drill and put a few rivets in there. The front one I did just because I expected it to. I put a couple of bushings in there so I could kind of tighten bolts up. Nuts up anyways, and we have backup nuts on there to keep everything from wiggle wobbling around. But the straps, you know, the alignment on these things aren't perfect. The way they make the ribs in the tank and the way the straps are around, you know, around the bottom of the tank, the alignment's not perfect on them, but it'd be good enough, I guess. All right, so all in all, lengthy project, lengthy video, but maybe it'll help somebody that's got to do one of these tank installations, and maybe they got a 69 through 71 blazer that they're needing to change the tank, and they think they're just going to order one of these tanks and swap it out in an afternoon. Probably not going to be the case unless, of course, you just use that 2-inch nipple that comes on the tank, and you use some kind of flex hose. But take a little bit longer, and quite a big job if you're going to swap it out with the original gooseneck. You know, just to kind of recap, if LMC or whoever sources these tanks from Taiwan would get them without that flange on there, without the 2-inch flange brazed on there, boy, that'd sure be a benefit for us blazer guys. All right, folks, on to the next thing. I think that's brake lines, and we'll have videos coming out on that as well. See ya.